Hello and thanks for joining me. You know, a few days ago I was tagged on the Josh's Muffin tag by Richardson Reads, and so I thought today would be a good day to get my responses up. But following this tag, I will also touch base briefly on what I'm currently reading, as well as let the random universe choose my next read off of my priority reading list in a random drawing. So stay tuned for that. But let's get back to the tag. Josh's Muffin tag, I'm not sure who originated this tag, but if I do find that out, I will link to it below in the details, and I'll also link to Richardson Reads responses down in the details below. Okay, the theme of this tag is muffins, right? So different kinds of muffins and questions related to associated with the different kinds of muffins. So number one, blueberry muffin. If someone said literature, who is the first writer that comes to mind? Well, you know, so I thought about this, and the first person I thought of was actually Haruki Murakami. But then I started thinking, you know, a lot of people don't consider him, you know, because he's a popular contemporary writer, that, you know, what he's writing is actually considered literature. So I looked up the definition of literature, which is written works, especially those considered of superior or lasting artistic merit. So, yeah, maybe it's a little soon to see if Haruki Murakami is going to have lasting merit. And whether or not it's artistic enough, you know, this would not be probably for me to say, because I don't think that I have the background in writing and literature to say that per se. You know, I think that literature is a lot of time, it's in the eye of the beholder. You know, what has merit, artistic merit to you, although there is the other side of it. So there are experts, and I do acknowledge that, that the experts who spend a lot of effort and time studying literature, that they are qualified then to say what is and what is not. But by the same token, everyone is free and should be free to explore whatever avenue in their literature world they want to, I think. So I think there's room for both. I think there's room for you know, the academic sort of authority expert opinions, as well as just every reader has their own opinion as well, and there's no reason why those two can't coexist, in my opinion. So along the lines of what maybe an expert would consider, the Nobel Prize winner of Hermann Hesse, I would say, was the second one that came to my mind. Number two, let's jump to the next question. English muffin, a work of British literature that became easier to understand when discussed. I'm going to say Virginia Woolf Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I read Mrs. Dalloway last year, and while I enjoyed it very much and found it very enriching, my experience of reading that book was really deepened and enriched by the discussion that I had with other people who brought different perspectives about their experience with reading Mrs. Dalloway, and also different aspects of the characters that I had not thought of. And so I think that, you know, my experience of the whole book was really deepened through that discussion. So I'm going to say Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Number three, Corn Muffin, a book that is great to take on the go and read at any time. Okay, the first one I thought of, just sort of, to me this means a book that is just easy to dive into and sort of light, and I thought of A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy O'Toole. I had actually meant to bring the book out and have it here, but I didn't, so I don't have it to show you. But yeah, A Confederacy of Dunces is a very, very funny book. If you haven't read it, it's one of those books that I can just pick up and read a paragraph and probably laugh at something. And then I also thought of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, especially the first trilogy. That's another series, 3 books that I could, well, there's actually more than 3, but the original 3, that I could just pick up and on the go and jump into that world anytime, as well as the culture world of Ian Banks. And I recently heard that the first of the culture novels, Consider Phlebas, is being adapted for a series on Amazon. So I don't know the details of that, but I hope they don't screw it up, because the world of the culture is another sort of science fiction world that I can easily step into. Okay, number 4, Chocolate Chip, a writer you feel was or has been able to write during all aspects of their lives. So this one was a hard one. I had to think about this for quite a while. I finally decided to settle on Ursula K. Le Guin, who recently died. She had a very long career of writing, well over 50 years, I think. She only recently died, and she was, I don't remember how old, quite old though, quite she lived quite a long time, and she was productive, I think right up until the end of her life, as she started, I think maybe way back in the early 60s. So she had a long run. So I'm going to say Ursula K. Le Guin. I haven't read a lot of her stuff. Not as much as I should, but I'm going to chip away at it, like I do. All right, number 5, Oatmeal Raisin. A bookish trait you feel is just not necessary. Okay, so I kind of touched on this in the first question, the blueberry question about literature. I think there's a lot of genre snobbishness among bookish people where there's, my genre is better than your genre kind of thing. And I don't waste my time on your genre because it's not worth it. I don't think that's necessary. I think that, literature, like I said, there's room for the experts, and there's also room for the average reader. Because the reader's journey, to me, an individual's reading journey can take you through multiple genres, and if you fence yourself off from certain things because you feel like it's beneath you or something, then I feel like that you're missing out. Or to me, I feel like I would be missing out if I just said, okay, well, this is off limits to me because I don't want to waste my time. There's nothing redeeming about romance, or there's nothing redeeming about mystery or something like that. I don't think that's helpful. That's not how I see reading. Everybody's entitled to a different opinion, but I just feel like there's a lot of genre snobbishness that's really not necessary. Okay, number 6, Bran. What kind of reading material do you find you constantly force yourself through? So I'm a pretty deliberate reader, and I don't read, I usually, and I'm also a finisher, so I generally, if I start a book, I will finish it. I think, I thought about this quite a while too, and I think the most challenging thing for me to read is science-y stuff. I do like reading science. Like last year I read a book called The Jazz of Physics, which related jazz to physics, and that was really interesting to read, but sometimes the physics part of it, which I'm not educated in physics, nor do I have a mathematically inclined mind, and so sometimes that's a bit of a challenge for me to get through these kind of sciencey discussions. But I do push my way through it because I feel like if I go ahead and push my way through it, I will end up learning something, and I usually do. And if I do this enough through the course of my life, maybe I will, at the end of it all, be a little more versed in physics than I otherwise would have been. So yeah, I'll say sciencey physics stuff. Number 7, Cranberry-Orange. Which 2 characters from different works would you like to see in one? Okay, I thought about this. This is a lot of fun. This was a ton of fun to think about. I'd like to see Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice team up on a buddy adventure with Ruby from Cold Mountain, because Mr. Darcy, Mr. Manners from the Regency period versus but almost illiterate, very earth spirit type, pragmatic Ruby from the American Civil War era in Cold Mountain. I'd like to see them buddy out on an adventure in the erratic world of Anne Leckie's Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Mercy, trilogy from the erratic world in the far human empires of the galaxy. I feel like that juxtaposition of Mr. Manners, Mr. Darcy, the sort of hard scrabble, earthy, pragmatic, ultra pragmatic, no nonsense Ruby from the American Civil War era would just be a great buddy team, And if I had creative writing skills enough to do that, I would make that happen. All right, number 8, Coffee Cake. If you could see any poet, dead or alive, recite poetry at your cafe, which one would it be? Okay, I got a picture. This should come as no surprise to long-time listeners to my channel, but that would be Fernando Pessoa, the Portuguese poet who died in 1935, who I love. Love the Book of Disquiet, love his poetry. I would love to sit down with Fernando Pessoa if he was reciting at a local cafe from the Book of Disquiet. I would be on the front row every single night. Love Fernando Pessoa. All right, number 9, Cruffin, which is a cross between a croissant and muffin, a great short work of French literature. Okay, so I am choosing Michel de Montaigne's essays. I've read a few of those essays, those are short works. And, you know, Michel de Montaigne, these essays are, you know, so interesting even to read today, and very relevant. So, yeah, Michel de Montaigne's essays, French, great short work of French literature. It's not a short work, but the individual essays are short works, so I feel like it met the criteria for a Cruffin. Number 10, Muffin Top. A work that would be better abridged. Well, you know, like I mentioned, I don't really have creative writing skills, so I hesitate to tell writers how to create their works, because what they're doing is, you know, they're creating the work that then I'm going to explore. So I don't really want to wouldn't want to tell anyone to abridge their work. You know, if they feel like it needed to be 700 or 800 pages long, you know, who am I to argue? But I will say that Tom Wolfe's A Man in Full is a book that I wanted to reread last December, but I did not really have time because of its length. So I would say, you know, maybe that could be abridged, maybe that could be chopped down a little bit, because my main interest in that is this one particular character, a young man who winds up in prison and discovers Stoic philosophy. This is at the end of the 1990s in the U.S. So that was really interesting to me, and why I wanted to reread the book, and I really only wanted to reread that part to see how to refresh my sort of experience with that. So yeah, I will say A Man in Full by Tom Wolfe. All right, number 11. What is your favorite muffin? My favorite muffin is a banana walnut muffin. So now you know. Number 12, let's go to Drury Lane. Who do you tag? I'm not sure who to tag, you know, because I'm not sure who's done this or who hasn't, so I'm going to tag. If you're interested in doing this tag, if you think it's fun, then I'd love to see your responses up. If you're a commenter, you don't do videos, but you find any of these questions interesting, I would love to hear what you have to say about those as well. So just leave your comments down below, and I would love to see those. So that's it for the tag. I am going to be doing quite a lot of traveling this week for work, and so I'm almost finished with what I'm currently reading is Jerusalem, and I have about 100 pages or so to go in this book, but I probably will finish it tonight. However, I am leaving bright and early in the morning to go to Portland, Oregon, where I will be for a few days. So I'm going to have a series of long flights out there and then back. And then after I get back, the next day I go to New York City by train. So I will have yet again more sort of travel time. So I'm going to get a lot of reading done. So I need to go ahead and choose my next work. I have already chosen. The universe already chose Demian by Hermann Hesse in the last drawing I did. So following Jerusalem, I will be reading Demian by Hermann Hesse. But let's do a drawing to go ahead and see what I'm going to be reading after Demian. I am going to be reading and taking on my trip with me so that I have 2 books on my trip. I'm going to be reading Definitely Maybe. Definitely Maybe. Definitely Maybe is a work of Soviet-era science fiction by the Strugatsky brothers, and I have been chipping away reading the Strugatsky books since last year and love them. So Definitely Maybe concerns scientists. Looks like scientists, if I remember the synopsis of it, there is something stopping the scientists from proceeding in their work, and there's maybe a nefarious force out there that doesn't want science to progress. So it sounds like it's going to be a fun book, and I can't wait to dive into that. So I will be getting into Definitely Maybe after Demian by Hermann Hesse, and I will probably check in sometime this week with a book chat on Jerusalem, because I should be finished with this pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, take care. Bye.